The Warhammer 40k universe is one that is filled with multiple warring factions that battle ceaselessly in a bid to vanquish their adversaries for good. Titus is a firstborn member of the Ultramarine Spacemarine chapter who has borne witness to this relentless savagery on more than a number of occasions for several hundreds of years. With the upcoming release of Warhammer 40k Spacemarine 2, we thought we'd take the time to look back at Titus's history and recap all the major events preceding the outset of Spacemarine 2. Let's begin. Titus was born on the agri-world of Tarentus, which is located in the feudal interstellar empire of Ultramar. Little is known of his early life, but Titus was soon recruited to serve the Ultramarines and passed his initial training with flying colors, overcoming every challenge he faced with such strength and vigor that he quickly rose up the ranks to become the finest warrior among the recruits. Upon becoming a fully fledged Astartes, he faced his first battle with the Xenos alongside his brothers. Fortunately for Titus, the art of warfare was something that came naturally to him, and knowing that in his fight against the enemies of the Imperium, he was fulfilling the will of the God Emperor, he felt an unmatched sense of satisfaction. But although he was a capable soldier, Titus was highly aggressive and ill-tempered to say the very least. Lacking the wisdom and experience of older Marines, Titus would often find himself in situations where he came far too close to meeting his untimely end. But thanks to his aptitude in combat, he was still able to best his foes, even if only by a thin margin. Over time though, and seemingly under the guidance and mentorship of Captain General Trajan, Titus learned to control his anger, making him far deadlier and thus more effective on the battlefield. Battle after battle, Titus continued to improve as a warrior and gained much renown throughout the Ultramarines, and so his connection with them deepened with each new campaign and subsequent victory. Titus's most trusted companion was none other than Sergeant Sidonus, who became a Space Marine a number of decades before Titus. Sidonus's experience and pragmatic, committed attitude made him an extremely adept warrior, and as such, he was a source of inspiration and strength for Titus, who often turned to him for sound advice. Unfortunately for Titus, in a routine mission against the Eldar that went terribly awry, his mentor Trajan would meet his demise at the cruel hands of the humanoid Xenos. With the leader of the second company gone, Titus stepped in to assume command over the Marines. Seeing that Trajan was what Titus saw as the very embodiment of the Ultramarines' ideals of nobility and honor, he aspired to be as effective a leader as his predecessor. As his status and reputation grew, so too did the admiration for him shared by many of his fellow Ultramarines, and to one of the younger Astartes by the name of Leandros, Titus became something of a role model. Seemingly in an effort to gain the favor and respect of Titus, Leandros frequently quoted the Codex Astartes and leapt at any opportunity to showcase his might as an Ultramarine. Despite Leandros' naivety and foolhardiness, Titus would recall his own reckless behavior in his earlier days, and so would do his very best not to rebuke Leandros too harshly, although it is safe to assume that some lessons could only be imparted with a fair degree of force. Although Titus has faced countless foes in the many conflicts he has found himself involved in, he believes that the forces of chaos are possibly the single greatest threat to the Imperium of man, and there is a very real reason why. On one tour of duty, Titus and his squad found themselves pitted against a powerful chaos sorcerer who was able to manipulate the power of the warp and bend it to his will. As the Ultramarines faced off against the sorcerer, they were each struck down by blasts of warp energy that the malign Psyker hurled at them. In the end, the only Marine who remained standing was Titus himself. In that moment, he truly believed that his death was imminent, so left with no other choice, the captain of the second company flung himself at the sorcerer, burying his chainsword in the evil servant of Chaos's chest as he continued to suffer from the blasts of warp energy the sorcerer wielded. As Titus watched the life fade from the sorcerer's eyes, he believed that he too would meet his end as the warp energy that he had absorbed would soon overwhelm him. But before he could do anything further, the world around him went dark as he lost consciousness. But even though Titus should have died given how much warp energy he had been blasted with, he miraculously survived. The apothecaries were astounded that Titus was able to recover from what should have been fatal injuries. And even though they did their best to discern precisely why Titus had managed to survive and regain his vitality, they could not arrive at any decisive conclusion on the matter. Due to the fact that Titus's recovery was entirely unnatural, it became abundantly clear that he was somehow capable of resisting the effects of the warp. As a direct consequence, many Ultramarines became suspicious of Titus, leading them to question his allegiance to the Imperium and thus his devotion to the Ultramarines. Titus soon became aware of the fact that parameters had shifted and that many of those who had once admired him now distrusted him and questioned his integrity. Even though Titus could understand this to some extent, he inevitably felt a great sense of resentment building up within him as he believed his countless years of tireless service to the preservation of the Imperium and its values was more than ample proof of his loyalty and valor. Then, at some point after his 200th year of service, Titus and the entire second company of Ultramarines were ordered to defend the Forge world of Graia against the Orc Waaagh of 1 million greenskins led by warboss Grimskull. Upon entering Graia's atmosphere via Thunderhawk, Titus, Sidonus, and Leandros surveyed the situation, and seeing that a kill cruiser was wiping out the incoming escort vessels, Titus decided he and his allies should board the Orc ship using assault marine jump packs. Leandros expressed his disapproval as the Codex Astartes does not recommend this course of action as it may scatter the attacking force. Titus ignored Leandros' protests and used a jump pack to land on the gun deck of the kill cruiser. Here Titus encountered Grimskull but was unable to dispatch him. However, Titus was able to turn the ship's guns on itself, which subsequently caused it to crash into the planet's surface. Titus subsequently reunited with Leandros and Sidonus on the ground. The three then met up with 2nd Lieutenant Mira of the 203rd Cadian Shock Troops Regiment and the only surviving Imperial Guard officer on the planet. Mira informed Titus that the Orcs had captured Planetary Defense Battery Goliath and that the Imperial forces could not make any landings as a result. Titus, Sidonus, and Leandros then proceeded to deal with this problem, killing many Orcs along the way. After planting a melter bomb on one of the defense battery's artillery shells, the Orcs attempted to fire the shell in question, which effectively destroyed the gun. This allowed the Imperial Guard to land on the planet in their Valkyries and reinforce their ground forces' positions. The three Astartes then pushed forward and discovered a servo skull that delivered a message from Inquisitor Drogon of the Ordo Xenos. Drogon informed the three that the Orcs were close to obtaining a Warlord-class Battle Titan and that the Astartes would need to proceed to the Ajaxus Manufactorum in order to stop the invaders and secure the Titan. Titus and his compatriots then made their way to the Manufactorum and met Drogon, who then informed them that the Orcs could not under any circumstances be allowed to gain access to the facility's power supply, a warp-based technology of Drogon's own design. Titus then proceeded to retrieve the power source, a cylinder swirling with blue energy. Titus survived a subsequent explosion due to the cylinder's unstable energy, much to the surprise of Drogon and his fellow Marines. Later on, Drogon told Titus that a weapon called the Psychic Scourge could be used to wipe out all of the Orcs, and even though this action could tear the planet apart, Titus agreed that they should use it before Graia was overrun. However, after locating the weapon and inserting the power source, Drogon fired it at an orbital spire that caused portals into the warp to open all over Graia. Titus, Leandros, and Sidonus then prepared to face off against Grimskull, but were instead ambushed by Chaos Daemons and a Chaos Sorcerer by the name of Nemeroth. Nemeroth was also accompanied by a band of Chaos Space Marines known as the Chosen of Nemeroth. The Sorcerer then slew Inquisitor Drogon, who had been nothing but a daemon host all along. Just before Nemeroth could continue, Grimskull attacked him, causing the two to tumble over a railing and fall into the abyss beneath. Titus then decided to destroy the warp portal using the unused Titan, and even though Leandros was seemingly unnerved by his resistance to the warp, the plan went unchallenged. After battling Orcs and Chaos Marines, Titus fought Grimskull and successfully dispatched him, which caused the Orc horde to fall back. Titus then used the Titan to destroy the war portal and requested extraction from the orbiting strike cruiser. He handed over the power source to Sidonus and told him to head to the extraction point, but Nemeroth ambushed and killed him before he could escape. Enraged, Titus swore vengeance against Nemeroth, and with the help of the Blood Ravens chapter and his fellow Ultramarines, he ascended to the top of the destroyed spire and faced off against Nemeroth. After attacking the Chaos Sorcerer, the two fell off the spire, and with his resistance to the warp and unbridled rage, Titus was able to defeat Nemeroth and crush his skull, causing his corpse to melt back into the warp. After meeting up with Mira and Leandros, a Valkyrie descended and dropped off members of the Black Templar chapter and Inquisitor Thrax. Leandros then confirmed that he was charging Titus as a heretic, citing that no true Space Marine could resist the powers of chaos as Titus had. Titus did not resist the charge, as it would have caused harm to Mira, the Imperial Guard, and his fellow Ultramarines, but he did state that he was no traitor to the Emperor. Before his departure, Titus told Leandros that because of his dogmatic adherence to the Codex Astartes, he had failed to measure up to what it truly means to be a Space Marine. Titus then boarded the Inquisitor's ship in order to undergo a merciless investigation led by the Inquisition. Now, more or less 200 years since the events on Graia, Titus, now a Primaris Space Marine and having been demoted to the rank of Lieutenant, finds himself hurled headlong into the Fourth Tyrannic War as he endeavors to save the Imperial planets of Avarax and Kadaku from the Tyranid swarms of Half-Fleet Leviathan. Space Marine 2 is out in winter 2023 and will be available on PlayStation, Xbox, and PC. And that's it, everyone. That's the story of Titus so far. What do you think of Titus's journey? And are you excited to play Space Marine 2? Let us know in the comments. Be sure to smash that like button to circumvent Exterminatus and subscribe for daily gaming, VR, and tech content. From me and the crew, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Later!